right, yeah, I think it's good to start, Nancy.
Okay, great. I want to welcome everybody to Northwest Indiana Green Drinks. And I am so happy to announce that this is the last of our series for our 13th year. So I think that's something to acknowledge and to be happy about and to celebrate. And Kathy Sipple is on, and we first became familiar with green drinks through her. She had one going in Valparaiso. And Dennis Britton, who's a good friend of mine, kept telling me, you have to go over, you have to go over. We have to do this in Michigan City. So I finally did. And then we did. And during COVID, we sort of, stopped and reconfigured. And we're doing this now live on Zoom, which is really great, especially for people that may not be able to be with us, during this time period. They can go onto YouTube. Save the Dunes has a page on YouTube, and you can watch any of our past presentations that have been recorded. Thank you all, our participants, because without you, we would not be doing this. And it's really you that gives us the energy to keep going and to keep finding wonderful speakers for you. And I think it's really great that we all learn together and grow together. And absolutely, I think because of you and us and everybody that's on these, we actually make our communities places where people really love to live, work, and play. I want to acknowledge our co-sponsors for this event, Save the Dunes, Michigan City Sustainability Commission, and we're supported by Northwest Indiana Region Resilience. And again, that's Kathy Sipple. Our guest hosts this month are 95.1 FM AM. That's AM 1420 WIMS, 219 Green to Connect, and the Pokagon Band of the Pottawattamie. And I'm very happy to see that they posted our event on their Facebook page, and also Ohio State University. So I'm going to hand it over to Em. She'll do housekeeping, and then she'll introduce our guest presenter today.
Thank you, Nancy. Just to mirror Nancy, thank you for everyone coming tonight and joining us for this extra special season closer of Northwest Indiana Green Drinks for the year. Light housekeeping things. We ask that everybody here in Zoom remain on mute and leave any questions or comments in the chat while Dr. Lowe is presenting, and we hopefully will have time at the end to answer any of those questions. If you're watching on Facebook, please feel free to leave any of your questions in the comments under the live video. We'll also get to those. And without further ado, I'm here to introduce Dr. John Lowe, retired professor at Ohio State University and citizen Pokagon Band of Pottawattamie, to present our November green drinks on the importance of land acknowledgments for Chicago and Northwest Indiana.
Well, excuse me. Thank you, Em. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight to participate. I'm very honored by your presence. My name is Professor Lau. I should say hello in our original language, Bonjour, hello. After the program, if you want to hear me speak some more Potawatomi, I'm happy to, but I don't want to cut into my time too much. And so, yeah, we're talking about Northwest Indiana and the greater Chicago area. They are the ancestral lands of the Potawatomi, and why historically accurate land acknowledgments are important. History generally is important that it be accurate. So it's not surprising that I might argue that land acknowledgments, being a historical statement, should be accurate too. So on the first screen, we see a mural in Chicago by my good friend and colleague, Andrea Carlson, just proclaiming that the Chicago, you are on Potawatomi land. There's a lot of confusion about who is from Chicago or whose ancestral lands are from Chicago. And I have my perspective, which I'm going to present tonight. You can agree or not agree, um, you know, but as long as Nancy doesn't start yelling that um, I'm telling lies, we'll be all okay. Right? And um, so uh, I guess I kind of already explained this slide. Uh, so, um, I was professor at Ohio State for 13 years, and the students can tell you that I never let the slides get in the way of my mouth moving faster than the slides. So, who are we? We're the Pottawattamie. Pottawattamie, Pokagon, Pottawattamie. That's how we say it in our language. Pokagon, Pottawattamie. We're Pokagon band. We're 6,000 people approximately, most of us living in Southwest Michigan and Northwest Indiana. We might be neighbors to many of you, right? I happen to live right now in New Carlisle, Indiana. And and I grew up in Niles. I grew up within that community in the spiritual, social, ceremonial, political life of that community. Um, Raised large part by my Potawatomi grandmother, Goldie. And very embedded. I was first, I was second tribal attorney, tribal member who was tribal attorney for the tribe. I was a co-author of the first tribal constitution. I was on tribal council. Um, so got a lot of experience firsthand. So this is our national seal, red-tailed hawk, the sun, the fire. These all have meanings to us in our stories. And perhaps sometime I can come back another time and we can talk more about stories and some of these stories. Um, so why is this area of Northwest Indiana important? Well, geographically is very important. As many of you may know, we're on a continental divide, north-south continental divide. What that means is that in this area, in the ancestral lands of the Potawatomi, we were blessed with having rivers that run all sorts of directions. They run north, they run south, and those rivers branch out going east, west. So we could go to Hudson Bay, we could go to the Atlantic Ocean, we could go as far up down the Mississippi, the Missouri River over to Yellowstone. We could get down to the Gulf of Mexico. So we weren't wandering savages clad. We were continental travelers. So that was an important part. Water was our highways, and so we traveled a lot. And so it was an excellent place for the Creator to place us. The other aspect is the Kankakee Marsh, which here's a map of it. Most of it, it's a result of settler colonialism. It was drained and turned into farmland, very good farmland. Uh, but we lost that great wetlands of the marsh. Most of it is all gone. There's little bits and pieces of it that you can see. There's efforts at restoration of those wetlands, both by environmentalists and conservationists and Pokagon Pottawattamie tribe too. And so the word Kankakee comes from Potawatomi word, and it's not a word I use often. It's Piki, Piki. Iki generally means place. So it's wetlands place or swampy place. Like think of Milwaukee, that key always means place. So that's where Kankakee Marsh is and why it has its name. So lots of people's lived in the Great Lakes region, and many of them in this area. Um, there were tribes from the uh, Illini tribes. All of these tribes were Algonquian except for the Ho Chunks in Wisconsin. And this area being at the south end of Lake Michigan, having uh, the Chicago Portage nearby uh, meant that this was a great place of traverse. This was Potawatomi lands, but there were lots of people coming and going. And we weren't territorial. We didn't have wars against immigration or traveling through back then, um, so long as, and in fact, many of our tribes were intermarried. Our clans were affiliated with other clans. For instance, I'm Turtle Clan. I would have as many rights and responsibilities to a Turtle Clan Menominee person as I would to a Bear Clan Pottawattamie person. Married, I think of the webs of social contact and connection is like when I was in grade school and they would draw yarn with push pins and spread it all out and show something. That's how we were interconnected. So there wasn't very much conflict back in the day because uh, you might have a Potawatomi person say, uh, well, um, I'm Bear Clan and I'm tired of these Miami people taking the best places of fishing on the St. Joseph River. And so we should attack their village. Well, there might be somebody else at that same fire though that would say, well, let's think about this because actually my sister uh, is married to a Miami person, and my brother married into a Miami family. And so I'm not interested in attacking that village. And so you can see how those networks played out to a lot of cooperation, collaboration, connection. We weren't obsessed with territory. We weren't obsessed with uh, nationalism until settler colonists got here. And they essentially commodified our land and our identity. And that's what made us, excuse me, into the tribes that you think of today. But we all had, each of these tribes had distinct histories, distinct stories, um, distinct leaders. Um, and so important stuff. We weren't just some homogenous group of native people. We acknowledged and recognized similarities and our differences. So, creation stories. We have among the Potawatomi, aware of at least 4 creation stories. We have the tradition that everyone has a right to their story. I have a right to my story. You have a right to your story. You don't have a right to tell me my story is wrong. I don't have a right to tell your story. But why I bring up creation stories is that while other tribes, I'll go back to this one, some of these other tribes claim now Chicago or Northwest Indiana or Northeast Illinois was their ancestral lands too. Um, and there's political reasons for that. There's political juice in being affiliated with Chicago, frankly. Nobody argues about Duluth, right? No, people will try to get connected. But we, the Potawatomi, in our creation stories, there's some of the creation stories, of course, woman was created first from the breath of the creator. And then, as the story so often goes, like in the book of Genesis too, but the gender flipped. Um, she got bored. She wanted a partner, creator, finally relented, and created man. Man had such an ego that he insisted on being lowered through a hole in the sky. Here I am. And Pottawattamie men have been looking for Pottawattamie women to save us from ourselves ever since. Um, but I bring up creation stories too because the Pottawattamie are the only tribe that claims this area as ancestral lands with a creation story that puts us here from the beginning. Everybody else was created somewhere else and then somehow finds themselves in the area. We're the only ones that have creation stories that say that we created places, Grand Rapids, places in Milwaukee, or places in Chicago. And we're the only ones with the creation story that says that we've been here since the beginning of time. That's a story that my grandmother Goldie told me. We all know that grandmothers do not lie, right? So, so I stick with Goldie's teaching. So, um, I also promised Nancy and Em to talk about where does the word Chicago come from, and it's actually a Potawatomi word, Jagaganuk, which means wild onion. Uh, Swampy area, wet area there, except for the ridges running through Chicago, what's now Chicago. And so there's stories about that too, that it's not just about a plant, but about a person who um, joins the plant realm. Right? So that's another story for another time. So Chicago comes out of that, right? Chicago. So Jean Baptiste du Sable, probably his name is John Baptiste. Du Sable means sandbar in French. And there's a sandbar at the mouth of the Chicago River. It's probably describing where Jean Baptiste was living, which was not unusual back. In any event, he is the first non-native to settle in Pokagon. And to do that, he married Kitty Hawa, a Potawatomi Indian woman from a prominent family. Was adopted into the tribe. He was as much, once you're adopted, I mean, he's as much as he's Haitian, and the Haitian community is proud of that and certainly support that 100%. But he's also Potawatomi. He was adopted into the community. He had to have been to have married Kitty Hawa. And but had good success there for a while until squeezed out by white merchants, right? So the maps that show that the Potawatomi ancestral lands are here. So there was this thing called the Beaver Wars. And in the 1600s, if you don't know what the Beaver Wars are, they were a war of extermination. Indian on Indian violence, unfortunately. It disrupted that earlier story I mentioned to you about things going smoothly. During the Beaver Wars, the Iroquois, the Haudenosaunee, from what's now New York State, came west because they all the beaver out of there. So they were moving west to take territory with beaver in the Great Lakes. The Dutch were arming them with guns. Nobody would arm the Algonquian Indians with guns. And so they nearly exterminated us. And so they drove almost all the Algonquian tribes either west, south, or up to the Door County, Wisconsin. where we made our last stand successfully. Finally, generations later, we had a lot of children. We convinced the French to give us firearms too. And we drove the Iroquois all the way back to New York State. So when the Jesuit priest, Marquette, and the entrepreneur Joliet, came to this area uh, and discovered the Chicago portage that all the Indians had known about for thousands of years, um, they wrote down who they were meeting. And they didn't meet Pottawattamie people at first. They met Pottawattamie people later, but in their first travel here, they met other people. Well, the reason for that, I'll go back to this other side, is that everything was in a state of flux. People were coming home. They were returning back to this area. And the Potawatomi had not fully repopulated their ancestral lands. And so that was the start of the confusion about who are the Indians of Northeast Illinois and Northwest Indiana. So it all starts with there was that diaspora from the Beaver Wars, end of that, the return home. And so it becomes a confusing time, particularly for non-native people writing histories and journals, and they didn't understand what was going on. So this is a map that was created by the United States Court of Claims to settle land claims. And they took testimony not only from historians, academics, historians, anthropologists, archaeologists, but also testimony from tribal elders. Tribal elders testified at these court proceedings. And at the conclusion of those court proceedings, this is the map that they drew up as to where the ancestral lands are. Pretty well covers Northwest Indiana, doesn't it? Right up to about the Wabash River. South of that's Miami territory. So this is a map that one of our Kyle Malat, our tribal citizen and language instructor, identified all Potawatomi villages. And it's a lot of Potawatomi were the most populous tribe in the Great Lakes region until we were broken up into separate tribes. A lot of us removed, others fled to Canada, down to Mexico, one group up to northern Wisconsin. Until then, we were the preeminent. And in the 1795 Treaty of Greenville, that great first treaty that established Fort Dearborn, the first signer, the most important person, is Chief Topnaby, the Potawatomi leader. He signed first because he was signing regarding Potawatomi land, and he was the preeminent leader of all of the Indians gathered for that treaty. So a lot of villages. I didn't have a map that goes further into Porter County, I don't think, but gives you an idea that there's a lot of villages that are sprinkled. You all may even know of more villages than I'm aware of. We're constantly on a learning trajectory within the tribe to find out where our burial grounds are, where our sacred grounds are, where our council grounds are, where our villages were, all of these things, because so much of it, most of it was remote. Knowledge was suppressed, the land was taken over by others, and so that knowledge became difficult to retain. So 1833 Treaty of Chicago, Leopold Pokagon, our tribal patriarch, negotiates as the last land cession treaty in the Great Lakes region for the Potawatomi anyway, and most of the tribes. And what it provided was that And when I say land cession, it's not like we were giving up this land voluntarily. It was at the uh, cannons surrounding us, guns pointed at us, alcohol brought in, drunk. Uh, there was a divide and conquer politics amongst tribes, tribes being played against each other by the U.S. government. Just not a good situation. In any event, the treaty was signed, and the last bit of Chicago was ceded. However, Leopold Pokagon negotiated an exemption. We were allowed to stay in Southwest Michigan because we had converted to Christianity. In fact, that's why Notre Dame is where it's at. On It was given land from the Pokagon Pottawattamie, and in exchange, they had promised to train Indian young men to become priests, women to become sisters, and to give us free education. They've forgotten about the free education aspect, but that's a story that we're working on. So stay. So uh, I was talking with Nancy. Not sure if I got the right, because there's several. I actually had created an Indian boundary road in Chicago, um, but there's Indian boundary roads at almost every. At one time, they were called Indian Boundary Road or Indian Boundary Line, um, and they essentially mark the borders between treaties, the ceded land on one side and the unceded land on the other. Squatters, non-native squatters, were not supposed to cross that line. Indians were not encouraged to come into the white community. Sort of a segregation of peoples, which was very unfamiliar with native people. And frankly, too, squatters didn't pay much attention to it either. And they took what land they oftentimes wanted without consequence, usually. But so that's the Indian Boundary Road in Porter County. So, Pottawattamie Park. Sometimes people ask me if I get stressed when Potawatomi is misspelled. There is no real misspelling of Potawatomi because it's not our language. It's not our word. Our word is Potawatomi, and it was a oral, not a written word. But Potawatomi, somebody once did in fact, Potawatomi is spelled throughout the treaties 120 different ways. So, so now we most commonly spell it with only, we don't have the double T's and we don't have the E on the end. But so this is a part of Michigan City, if I'm understanding correct, right? Or just north of Michigan City, and over by Potawatomi Country Club, which I'm still waiting for my invitation. It's gotten lost in the mail. I'm sure. I'm sure it's gotten lost in the mail. Anyway, the tradition, whether or not that tradition is accurate or not, is that according to the website about the neighborhood, is that it was on a former council ground, which I'm going to share with my folks back home. It may or may not have been. Sometimes, those stories are accurate. Sometimes they're not. But, it was our land at one time. So the people involved in this area, the ones that you hear of, I don't know of any leader incorrect me. I'm happy to be corrected this time. Is I don't know of any Miami or Menominee or Ojibwe leaders in Chicago or in Northeast Illinois or Northwest Indiana. They're all Potawatomi because that's who was there. It's the Potawatomi. Wabansie, Chichiquinque or Alexander Robinson. Many of these people were adopted in the tribes. That was not unusual. So these are all famous people in Indian Chicago history. Billy Caldwell, Sauganash, um, was a leader here and moved on out with his the Prairie Band out to uh, Iowa and then Kansas. Uh, Shabana was born Ottawa, but so was Leopold Pokagon was born Ottawa, but adopted into the Pottawattamie, and so he became an important leader also. And then, of course, Chief Menominee at Twin Lakes. Twin Lakes is pretty close to you folks, right? It's like maybe 30 miles south. So has anyone been to, I know you're all on mute, so I'm not expecting answers, but has anybody been to the monument there? It's interesting. There's a little. I noticed I was down at Indy yesterday, and coming back on 31. There's a little sign there that tells you to turn off for Chief Menominee statue. And I've been there during an event about 15 years ago, and it's a little odd. You know, it's Chief Menominee was the chief when the Indians were tricked by the government into, they were told to gather at their church. They're Christians. They gathered at their church, and then the church was surrounded, and then they were taken out and started forced walking on their trail of death. And we, Pottawattamie, were removed throughout Indiana and Illinois on a trail of death. That's another thing, by the way, I'll mention is that no other tribes were walked out of this area on a trail of death. Miami later were removed out of the Fort Wayne area on steamboats and stuff, but nobody was walked out except us from this area, right? So Chief Menominee statue. And so this is the Trail of Death. Probably you've heard of the Trail of Tears. This is not as famous, and we did not lose a fourth of our population like those tribes down south did. We lost several hundred people though. And the worst part of the Trail of Death for the memory of the descendants, including myself, is that when an infant or an old person died, we weren't allowed to stop and bury them. They were just pushed into the bush and keep walking. They say that when the Potawatomi walked through Springfield, that the non-native peoples came out of their businesses and houses and wept as they watched the Potawatomi trudging hundreds of miles in bad weather. So then jump to Michael Williams, who was Secretary of Tribal Council, when the Pokagon Potawatomi sued the city of Chicago for the lakefront. Now that's an act of land back, right? Pretty early, this is 1917, land back. And what we were arguing was that after the Great Chicago Fire in 1871, the lakeshore was filled in. And the original lake had been used as the treaty boundary. We never ceded the lake bed. We never gave that up. And the fill on top of it, presumably that would be unceded territory. And so, the lakeshore used to be along Michigan Avenue. Michigan Avenue was essentially the lakeshore drive of the time. That's why Water Tower, the Water Tower place thing is right there at Michigan Avenue. So that was a pumping station on the lakeshore, right? So we sued for that couple of miles that they extended the lakefront east onto our land. We took it all the way to the United States Supreme Court, 1917, and unfortunately, our Our lawyer said the law was with us, but the judges were against us. And had we won, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be sitting in some penthouse on Lakeshore Drive, right? I'm just kidding. But anyway, so we didn't win the land, but it's still, certainly I, as a historian, consider it, and as a lawyer, it's unceded territory. We never signed a treaty to that lakefront. Thus, it's unceded lands. And that stretches essentially from Evanston to, it extends at least, I think, to about Steelworkers Park in South Chicago. I'm not sure how much of the, if any, of like got to Gary, but a large part of the lakefront was extended and is unceded territory. So some things, exciting things have been going on. They created an indigenous cultural trail in Indiana Dunes. Uh, Hope if you haven't already that you have a chance to go out there and visit. I did last summer. It's very cool. It includes both the Miami and the Pottawattamie, Pokagon Pottawattamie. You know, it's non-native people don't like to get into disputes between Christian Indian claims, which I kind of get. You know, it's like in a way, you know, it's like they just, why can't we all get along kind of attitude. Anyway, so and we're close enough related. My grandmother Goldie, by the way, her first husband was Miami Indian. So, you know, we're very close peoples. And so there's this. That's pretty cool. And this gives you an idea of our service area. And so we go as far as so 4 counties in Michigan, 6 counties in Indiana. LaPorte includes LaPorte, of course, and Michigan City. I don't think it includes Porter is right to the west of that, right? So Porter County is not in the service area, but it's all Pottawattamie land. Why we call it a service area is we were finagled out of our reservation in the 1860s, cheated out of it. And so we had homes all across the Finn County area. And so when our sovereignty was restored to us, which is illegally taken, restored to us in 1994, but they weren't going to give us any land, give us a service area where we can provide services to our tribal members. So what we're preserving, we have a whole lot of things that we're working on preserving. And we're always looking for allies. And one of the reasons why I do these presentations is hoping to plant a few seeds, share a little knowledge, and hopefully conjure up some interest and curiosity, and invite you to learn more about us, your Indigenous neighbors, and the things we're doing. One obvious thing to do would be if you're free on a Labor Day weekend up in Dowagiac, Michigan at the tribal campus. We have a little campus there with powwow grounds. Just come visit the powwow. Kibunminka, which means I'm dead tired of picking berries. Essentially a harvest festival. So hope that you will come join us. Or reach out in some other way. We have a Pokagon.com website for the government, and always got things going on. So our symbol of community and commitment. And so with that, well, I think I ended actually 2 minutes early, but I'll stop for now. I mean, students would have been shocked by that, that I ever ended anything early. You say no. So should I end the share screen, or would somebody want to see another slide again? Oh, I didn't. Oh, here, I got 2 minutes. Something. Okay. Where did Lake Michigan come Uh, there it is, KTTHEGME. That's from Kyle Malat again, our language instructor. It's actually pronounced Gitchigama, Potawatomi, and a Ojibwe word. I'm not sure why the K is sound like a G, but he lived 2 years up in Forest County in a language immersion, home family that are fluent or spoke Potawatomi only in the home for 2 years and continues to study the language. And who knows why it's pronounced that way, but it's essentially Gitchigama, which means great body of water, um, the Great Lake. Right? So, okay, now I'll turn things over. Should I stop the share, or has anyone got questions about a slide?
Yeah, you can leave it up if you want to. We do have a
Sure,
couple of questions. We can jump right in.
sure.
Okay, so first question is, does the Indiana Dunes National Park or Indiana Dunes State Park regularly hire or work with Potawatomi members to lead interpretive programs?
Um, I It's a great question. I know that, well, and I should explain up until August of this year, I was in Central Ohio teaching at Ohio State University. So I was 250 miles away. Um, I do know that I was invited to speak at Ogden Dunes, as we talked about, and I spoke at Save the Dunes conference uh, at the national park that I think was in part sponsored by the park. That and I think that I think this was developed with a lot of collaboration between the Pokagon Potawatomi and the Miami. It's, signage that is in both languages. With the current state of funding for national parks and state parks, I don't know what the abilities of Indiana Dunes is to hire anybody at this point, during this tumultuous time. But certainly, hopefully in the future, because we're very tied to it, very connected to it. It means a lot to us.
Wonderful. Okay, next question is Blake asked, what was the Pottawattamie population like in the Calumet region in the late 1600s through the 1830s? And who were the chiefs then? Any, and because they're from the area south of Chicago, so they're curious about that kind of South Calumet region.
Yeah, South Calumet, there would have been some of the names have been lost. Black Partridge, I believe, was down the southern side of Chicago. Uh, Mattia was down on the south side of Chicago also. Those would have been chiefs that would have been involved. I don't think I mentioned, but were the people that burned down Fort Dearborn as an act of resistance in 1812 as a part of in allyship with Tecumseh and his movement for land back also. And so those would have been that I that would have been important down there. Others, uh, other people in the great question. Other people in the community might know. Again, I grew up in Southwest Michigan, so you know I've not done specific. I've done specific research on Chicago. I've not done specific research on the Calumet region.
Okay, thank you. Okay, another question is, I think they are asking what other connections, because they're saying what connections with other recognized Potawatomi tribes? Are there other Potawatomi tribes in other regions, or does the Potawatomi work with other recognized tribes? Not sure.
Well, we work with other recognized tribes. We're members of the National Congress of American Indians, which is basically an organization that includes most federally recognized tribes. Uh, we also are very proud that what is it? There's 9 other uh, Potawatomi tribes, I think, in the United States that are federally recognized. Uh, and so they vary from Upper Peninsula, Michigan. There's 2 other ones in southern Michigan, Gun Lake and Huron Band, and then us. There is Forest County up in Wisconsin. There's Prairie Band. There's Citizen Band down in Oklahoma. Prairie Band's in Kansas now on their reservation, and uh, there are tribes that fled to Canada, Manitoulin Island and Walpole Island. And so, and we have an annual gathering of Pokagon tribes, and which is really exciting when the people come together, the leadership comes together, and we talk through issues of common interest or need or um, concern and work on those together. That's something that is relatively new, certainly within my lifetime, probably started in the 90s, I suspect. So it's been going on 30 years plus, but to me, that seems like a short time.
Thank you. Peggy is asking about if you know any of the significance to the Marquette Park region. She works closely in the Miller Beach and Marquette Park region and is wondering if you know any other details about that area.
Well, I do know that Marquette, the Marquette Park, of course, is named after, the Jesuit priest. Um, and so all of those lands would have been places where Potawatomi people would have been. And beyond that, whether, I don't think that those would have been likely places for large village sites because of the weather coming off the lake. Um, Probably more, the villages would have been more inland, but we do know that sometimes we did um, have burials near near those near that water, Gitchigami and rivers, and belief in the power of water. Water is the blood of Mother Earth, no Muskegon, and so yeah, it's what I so they're all great questions, and it's a lot of this we're in the process. We have a culture and history department with the Pokagon Potawatomi, and there are people that are learning how to be historians and how to do historical research, and those are the kinds of things that they're oftentimes getting tasked with looking further into. And so I have a great hope that we'll recover a lot of that knowledge as time goes on. But if you know anything, if you happen to know something, always feel free to either drop me a line. You can get my email address from Nancy or M, and share what you know. I was just talking with a tribal member who was talking about. I want to share with you the name of the book. This is just today. It is called The Invisible Wheel of Time by Irvin Stuntz, Stuntz, written in the 1980s, and very hard to get a copy, but there's a copy at Notre Dame Library. And it details apparently the names of village leaders, place mounds, burial sites, village locations, that based upon the oral histories that people were telling him, and then he transcribed it down. And so I'm looking forward to, just found out about this book, and so I'm looking forward to reading it very soon. So don't check out the copy that I want to read. Wait 2 weeks and then check it out.
Thank you. Peggy dropped a link to some local historian information for Miller in the Marquette region in the chat. So feel
Oh,
free.
good.
Okay, a couple more questions from Blake. One is, I'd like to find out what the Pottawattamie ties to Jackson Park in Chicago before or during the World's Fair. And will there be a statue commemorating the Pottawattamie for their legacy?
Great question. Further north in Lincoln Park, uh, before we filed suit in the lakefront, we had, and I have photographs in another PowerPoint that I won't pull up now, but we would have encampments in Lincoln Park, and it became sort of a public facing of we're still here. Also became a bit of a fundraiser, is that people would pay to see the Indians, real Indians, because they're mostly just a myth. The most people that had, many of them recent immigrants to Chicago and to the United States. In Jackson Park, um, there was supposed to be, as I was researching my book, prints, the Pokagon Band of Pottawattamie in the city of Chicago, 2016 issue press, and I get 10 cents for every copy sold. I was inquiring about Jackson Park, and so contacted the park because it was written that pennies had been taken from school children after Simon's death in 1899, and they were going to build a statue to him. And so they had collected all of these bags of pennies. So I called the park because I was living in Hyde Park, going to the University of Chicago at the time, and I was wondering, it was a statue. Where is it? Maybe it's overgrown. Maybe I can clean it up. So I called them, and the guy on the person on the other line said, "What statue? The Simon Pokagon statue? Look, for the last time, there is no Simon Pokagon statue. It was never built. Nobody knows what happened to the money. It's Chicago." So, Blake, you're absolutely correct. That one, it'd be nice to rename the park, right? I would think it'd be much better Jesse Jackson Park than Andrew Jackson Park. It's honoring Andrew Jackson, the father of Indian removal, cultural genocide, ethnocide, ethnic cleansing, the Indian Removal Act of 1830. So that's a heck of a park to have named there. But whatever the name, yeah, I think statue to Simon Pokagon. Now there is there is underneath, what street is it? Well, it's a bricolage, which is a tile kind of artistic process that Italians created, or the bricolage that was done under several of the underpasses under DuSable Lakeshore Drive. And this one, I think, is Wilson, and is Indian history because that was the uptown neighborhood, was the urban Indian community there. And it runs on both sides. I don't know what condition it is anymore. When it was built about 20 years ago, created 20 years ago, I made sure there were bricolages representing Leopold Pokagon and Simon Pokagon and canoes. So he does have a monument in that bricolage, I'm proud to say. But yeah, more. And there's an arts commission, monuments commission going on right now in Chicago that is trying to create more outdoor indigenous created art, and that would be a good thing.
Thank you so much, John. I think we'll take a minute, last minute here to do some announcements. But thank
Were there any comments on Facebook? No. Okay. I just wanted to be sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you again, John, for coming on and presenting and sharing your knowledge with us, especially in celebration of Native American Heritage Month in November. Um, and yes, Peggy, I'll share John's email with you, or I could put it in the chat here just a second. Um,
And
and
then I'll just, while you're doing that, I'll just remind people, December is our traditional break for the holidays, so we won't be meeting in December. And then in January of 2026, we always kick off the year with a very special speaker from Save the Dunes. So Betsy Mayer will be with us. And so many new things have happened with Save the Dunes over this past year. It totally blows my mind, and I hope that people will join us for that presentation. It'll be, of course, the first Thursday of, no, it's not. We're moving it back a week because January 1st is New Year's Day. So we're not going to meet on that day. So it'll actually be the second Thursday of
that's the
January of
8th.
2026, the 8th.
8th.
Thank you, Em.
Yes. Um, And we'll look forward to having Betsy with us then, all the updates and kick us off for the new year. I do have a couple of other event announcements I want to share today. We will be participating in the Opt Outside hikes that happen on Black Friday in the Indiana Dunes National Park. They're slated for 1 p.m. and with the government shutdown, we've decided that Save the Dunes will be there leading hikes regardless of if we have rangers or not. So please feel free to join me. I'll be there. Hopefully, Jacob I think, is going to try to join us, and we'll have the whole Save the Dunes crew out to celebrate, not shopping, instead of hiking for Black Friday. So please